cash, since we had no cash income, on Friday afternoon in the summertime, we'd get out and gather up all the vegetables and take a couple or three live chickens in the chicken coop, and we would go to Marion Pedlin. And it was 12 miles. We'd get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, hitch the mules to the wagon, and away we would go. And we'd be in Marion by 8 o'clock. And Dad would usually pedal on a cotton mill hill first. And he'd wake up people sometime. And he'd come back to the wagon shaking his head. He just couldn't understand what in the world was going on with them people. They could sleep with the sun shining. And we would pedal until noontime, and he'd go on into Marion. We'd unhitch the mules from the front of the wagon, go tie them up to the back wheels and put their feet out in the wagon bed for them to eat. And we'd horse around there till 1 or 2 o'clock, buy whatever we had enough money to buy, and then take off home, and we'd get back home by sundown in the wagon. And for small items, you could sell eggs to stores. And as I was going to school, Mama would save the eggs. We seldom ate eggs unless it was Easter. And I'd take a dozen eggs to the store. They was worth a penny a piece, 12 cents. So I'd buy the 12 cents worth of sugar, salt, or coffee, whichever it was you wanted. But you could get her in the pound of each one for 12 cents in those days. But I'd take it home, and I'd do that much. And sometimes we'd sell as much as $4 or $5 worth of stuff on a peddling load, but half of it would be on credit, which we never would catch, never would collect. And we'd get home with as much as $2.50 of that long day's work. And that wasn't much money. But we always tried to have the crops laid by. That was finished working everything by the 4th of July. And after we got the crops laid by, we had woods, timber on our property. We'd cut a carload of either pine wood or oak wood. The pine wood was shipped to a paper factory, and the oak wood was shipped to Asheville to a chemical plant. They made tar to lay asphalt with, and tar was used for a lot of other things in those days. And we'd end up with about $15 out of that carload of wood, but enough to pay our taxes with. And sometimes have enough left over for a few clothes. We always got one new pair of socks a year, and Mama would knit heels and toes in our old socks from the previous year. Now she'd plant a row of cotton across the garden, and in the fall of the year, when we had a fire in the fireplace, we'd pick that cotton and lay it out on the hearth and let it get warm, and we'd pick the seeds out of it with our fingers. And I'd card the cotton, and Mama had 2 spinning wheels. She'd spin it into thread, and I've tried that, I bet 100 times, and I ain't never spun an inch of thread. It just wouldn't work for me. But she would use that thread then to knit new heels and toes in her old pair of socks, and she'd make us one new pair to wear through the winter. And she'd normally, we'd work the cotton at night, but she'd do her spinning and knitting in the daytime. But we'd sit and play with the cats if we had nothing else to do. We always had 4 or 5 cats. I used to sell honey for 12 cents a pound. I had some honey bees, and I'd rob my bees and sell the honey. And I'd save my money and ordered me my first pair of Sunday shoes, low-quartered black shoes, from a mail order, Chicago mail order catalog, and they cost me $1.98. But they're pretty nice shoes, and I wore them for a few years. But you could get a good pair of shoes anywhere just about for $1.98 in those days. If you had a job, you could make $2 a day for a 10-hour day's work. First job I ever got, I was 17 years old, and at a sawmill, a little pepper box sawmill back in them hills. 10 hours a day for 10 cents an hour. I'd cut the tongue out of old shoes and tie a string on each end of it and make a sling like David used to kill a giant with. And I'd put a stone in that and wind that thing up, and you could throw a rock much farther than you could by hand. And you could throw a little larger rock. And I've seen Dad throw rocks sometimes at the animals, a cow or a mule, and he'd pick up a rock and swing it underhand like throwing a softball. He could hit things, and he told me one time that he and his brother, as they were growing up, would get out on Sunday afternoon and start a nail, drive it in a tree, and they'd stand and throw rocks at it till they drove that nail farther back up in the tree. But he could hit real good when he threw a rock. He didn't often throw one, but it hit whatever it was intended for.